Filthy Animals is an ecology podcast for adults. Episodes may contain strong language and graphic descriptions of natural phenomena. A more detailed list of content warnings is included in the episode description.
Welcome to Filthy Animals, a sex, drugs, and ecology podcast where science educators talk about the unusual adult activities of the natural world that we think you need to know about. Every month we'll expose you to the latest research on all the filthy topics your high school science teacher was too embarrassed to talk about. I'm Alan.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Rachel, who is leading this episode for you guys. And today we are once again talking about something of the sexual nature of anyway.
Yes.
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 And unlike the bonobos, this is definitely just for reproduction.
Well, that's okay. You know, I think, yeah. It is sometimes, right?
It has to be.
It...
So, our topic for today is something that I encountered in a book, which I'm going to highly recommend to everyone. It's called An Immense World by Ed Yong, who has just a wealth of literature under his belt, including a lot of fun articles. He used to write for The Atlantic about really crazy animal topics. And this book goes through sort of the sensory world of animals and the ways that that world is different from what we experience as humans. Mm-hmm. Just as a little footnote to that topic, he casually mentioned that there are animals that have eyes in a lot of bizarre and unexpected places. For example, on their genitals. And I was like, hold on, what? And they didn't really talk that much about it. Mm-hmm. So I naturally needed to know more. And now I do. And now you will too.
Eyes on the genitals.
Indeed.
Where one presumably needs the benefit of sight.
Correct.
Is that okay?
It is okay. Yeah.
I've never felt the need for that.
Okay. Well, you're not a butterfly.
Oh, okay. Great.
If you without trying too hard, you can see everything you need to see.
Yeah.
Whereas a butterfly can't.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
It's back there.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, all the titles for these studies have really clever names, like the hind sight of butterflies.
That's adorable.
And yeah, it is butterflies that we're going to talk about today, which apparently have eyes on their genitals.
Nice.
Why? We're going to find out. Great.
I was really worried you're going to say, I don't know. I'm like, well, okay.
Oh, we actually do know. So that's good. I will say that there's not a lot of research on this, which kind of surprised me. It's basically just one guy doing a lot of research on this. Nice. So I read all of his papers, and there's not really anything new written about it. Like the paper that I read that was the baseline summary of all the research he'd done was published in like 2001 or 2002. Since then, I saw that he's like written in a lot of textbooks, like very recent textbooks, but it's the same guy writing about the same research. Okay. So, yeah, I guess our further understanding of eyes on butterfly genitals hasn't progressed very much since, 20 years ago.
Well, maybe it's time to reignite that interest. I just want to say it's a shout out to the people with the extremely specific, extremely unusual research interests. Mm-hmm. I mean, really the true heroes of science,
It's true. I should find this guy's name so that I can properly shout him out. Kentaro Arikawa.
All right.
Thank you for doing this important work.
Thank you very much. It's just interesting to think of the entirety of our knowledge of butterfly genital eyeballs confined with one person, really, who has deigned to share it with humanity.
Indeed.
Thank goodness he has shared it.
Yeah, it's inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Indeed. So let's first start by establishing what eyes are, and then let's establish what genitals are,
Okay.
and then let's
I'm
talk
ready.
about how they work together in this animal. How
Okay.
does that sound?
Is there going to be like a matching game here? Like,
Should there be?
is this an eye or a genital?
No.
Okay, gotcha.
No, I think it's very obvious. Which
Oh,
is
good.
which.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
for
good,
sure.
Good.
So what is an eye, everybody? How does vision work? What is happening, you know?
Well, they're kind of like jelly-filled sacs with some photoreceptive cells in them, and then that light gets turned into some sort of rudimentary image somewhere in the nervous system.
It's true. Is that all that an eye can be?
Well, I'm going to say no by the way you phrased that question, so I don't sound silly.
Yeah, no. There's a lot of eyes that exist in the world, and they exist in a lot of different evolutionary stages, and they've evolved like sort of a similar structure over time in multiple groups at the same time. I know that didn't make sense, but I'm saying, for example, jellyfish as a group have separately evolved eyes of different evolutionary quote unquote stages of complexity multiple separate times. So
Interesting. Okay.
there's a lot of eyeballs that exist in the world, and it's not really that much of a mystery how they came to function the way that like Charles Darwin originally had issues with eyes existing. He was kind of like, my God, this could undo my entire theory of evolution at one point. And people still to this day say that as if it like is a gotcha moment for Charles Darwin. But no, we know exactly how eyes evolved and how they function and the various levels of complexity that they exist in.
Right. Yes.
So here's the eye stages of complexity in evolution, according to biologist Dan Eric Nilsson. Number 1, photoreceptors. Photoreceptors just detect the presence of light. When there's light, they're like ding, 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 ding. And that's all the information they really give you.
Nice.
Great. Okay, stage 2.
Do the cells make that sound?
I mean, how can we say
That's
what
true.
the experience of the animal receiving that signal is?
Good point.
Are they receiving the signal in the same way that we receive the signal of touch? Are they receiving the signal in the way that we receive like signals of hearing or pain? Like who can say?
Oh man, that's a mind-blowing thing to think about.
Yeah, so maybe. Number 2. You add shading. So there's like pigments or some other structure in the cell that adds shading, which means that the photoreceptor can now infer the direction of light. So at this point, they're not considered genuine eyes yet. Like they're not producing like an image necessarily, but they can tell direction and a lot more information about the light that's coming in.
Okay.
Cool. At this stage, it's also true that it's detecting. So color is basically just different wavelengths of light. And so photoreceptors can be tuned to different wavelengths of light. So they can be more sensitive to certain colors than others. That's still true at this stage.
Gotcha.
Okay. Gotcha.
But like, is it forming an image? Like not really at this point.
Right.
Cool. Number 3 is where we get into like what we would consider to be actual vision. At this point, there's now those shaded photoreceptors and they're clustered together in a group. And because of this, they're able to like put together more of like a picture, and animals can truly see. The vision might be sort of grainy or blurry, and it's really only good for pretty crude or rudimentary tasks. But as soon as you start adding focusing elements like lenses, it becomes high resolution, which is what we'd consider the 4th stage of eyes. That's what we have. And there's actually some pretty cool hypotheses out there that, for example, the Cambrian explosion where life suddenly was like, boom, we're going to do lots of different cool, crazy things and diversify incredibly quickly. there's hypotheses that this directly corresponds to the evolution of high resolution sight because suddenly animals are able to really communicate things with each other and interact with each other across distances, right?
Oh.
So, you start to develop like spines and speed and chasing and warning signals and shells and like all sorts of other things as a response to things that are happening at a distance from you.
Gotcha.
True.
Because you can see it.
Yeah. No, like your mobility increases and your vision also has to.
Yeah. And so that like really intensifies the
Yes.
way that animals can interact with each other over space. They're
Fascinating.
not just like touching each other and being like, hello.
Just kind of feeling around in the dark. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So it's important to keep in mind that eyes do not evolve from like poor, crappy, shitty eyes to like perfect, amazing, like wonderful eyes.
Right.
Really, we should think of them more as eyes exist in a spectrum from performing a few simple tasks to performing many complex tasks exceptionally well.
Okay.
Right.
If that makes sense. So like if an eye can't see a full picture, it's not that it's a shitty eye, it's that it's performing just like a more simple task that's still useful and beneficial to the animal.
Right. That makes sense. Well, it's like, okay, like sometimes like you can have like eyes at various stages of development on the same animal, right? Like,
oh yeah,
like like bees have like the ocelli like on top of their head.
Yeah, most insects.
Which is an eye.
Yeah.
But it's not like for like visual sight.
Yeah.
It's for like, well, there's something up there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There's also interesting. So, like speaking of animals that have complex sight and also other types of eyes, there are sea snakes, which obviously have normal, like high resolution eyes, but they have photoreceptors, so like rudimentary eyes on their tails, which might be useful for detecting if your tail's like sticking out of a rock or something. You can pull it in with you.
Nice.
There's a lizard that also has like little photoreceptor eyes on its head.
Okay.
I can't remember. I don't know. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah. And so like those are, and then they're still providing like, even if it's not, a high resolution movie they can see or whatever, they're still performing the task of sight. It's just maybe performing the task of like, am I under something's shadow? And now I know that I'm being, so it is sight.
Right.
Yeah. There was a really cool section so there's a whole section of Ed Yong's book that talks about sight, obviously. And, they mentioned scallops in this discussion, which I thought was really cool because in this discussion of scallops, you might be familiar with the fact that they have like hundreds of eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of insane because they have way more structure and brain space devoted to eyes than an animal really should. And they just don't have they have the equipment to have amazing sight, but I guess there's something about their brain can't really interpret it correctly. So it's kind of like, what a weird thing. Anyway, the conclusion was that scallops are probably using sight the way that we use touch, and then using smell the way that we use sight. So like, you might like feel something brush against you and then you would turn to look at it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like a scallop would like sense something moving with its eyes and then like turn to smell it basically to get more information with its little tentacles.
Okay, so they have visual, they have like the visual receptive ability.
Yeah, they can receive a lot of information, but they can't interpret it.
Can't process it.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's wild. I always wondered. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, because I mean, I knew that they had like, the rimming, just like the shell, like the opening of their shell, just eyes. Like little tiny little yellow bloops all over the place. I guess it never really occurred to me, like, why would you honestly need that many eyeballs?
Right. Yeah. And what are they actually seeing? So it's cool to think of like sight as being a different experience for some animals. Like ooh, like maybe it is more like, oh, I felt something brush against me, but it's more like I felt something shade me out. Like like what does that feel like to them?
Mm-hmm.
It might just be a ding, ding, ding in their brain. It's not, but it could be.
Could be.
Yeah.
Again, we're not sure.
Not entirely sure. So in the case of butterflies, they have the second type of eye. So it's photoreceptor cells that have the shaded aspect where they can sense direction and get more information about the light, but they're not seeing real images. And they use them for sex and reproduction.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Did we define what genitals are yet?
No.
Okay.
Should I do that now?
You said you were.
You said you were.
Yeah, let's talk about genitals. Okay, so butterflies.
Yes.
Picture
Yep.
butterflies.
Okay.
What do their genitals even look like? What is happening there?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Right.
This is not
Nicole?
something that's occurred to me
Right.
to think about.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. What do you got, Nicole?
I mean, I know they're on the tip of the abdomen, but I don't even know if different butterflies have different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they probably do.
Yeah. They do.
like bug junk is extremely diverse, right?
Yeah, and it's really weird. Like, it's different from, mammal junk, which all kind of, like, you can kind of tell what's going on there when you look at mammal junk.
Yeah.
Insect junk is like, that looks like a Venus flytrap,
Yeah.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
So I remember like this one scientist that I worked with, you had to differentiate species, like closely related species, you had to look at their gonads.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like you had to get them under a microscope, look at them, and like, because they're so different.
Yeah. It's really common in beetles.
Just all sorts of, fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So in the case of butterflies, I have a diagram for you. Enjoy trying to decipher this.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
As you can see, the penis kind of looks like a club.
Yeah.
yeah, it does.
Very short.
Kind of looks like almost like a claw game. Like,
Uh-huh.
and they do call it a penis. Like that is
that is
the term.
There is a penis. There's a lot of different structures that we would not be familiar with, but there is
Yeah.
a penis in the male.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And there is a vagina, I guess they do call it that
Uh-huh.
in the female as well.
Not like a totally analogous organ, but like that is what they.
No.
Yeah.
But that's what they call it. Also, I learned through doing this research that butterflies have a separate like tube for laying eggs and receiving sperm.
Mhm.
Okay. So like that's
So the ovipositor
okay.
is like there's a different tube where they would receive the sperm versus laying the eggs out of.
That makes sense because that's not going to fit in that.
well, I mean, look.
But okay, I will say,
I mean, it does.
well, no, but I mean not like that part. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to stick the penis in the ovipositor is what I'm saying, or does it? But there's just a different tube there.
I mean, yes, there's just a different tube.
I see.
Yes.
I will say, given the arrangement of what's happening back there,
right.
I see the need to have a little bit more,
Some eyeballs.
like
Yeah,
a backup camera.
It's a lot going on.
Yeah.
There's also this is another Ed Yong article from 2017. In the world of butterfly genitalia, it gets kind of weird. Like we're focusing on eyeballs today, but this butterfly has teeth in its vagina.
Sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really taking the Venus flytrap aspect
Yeah.
to a really extreme degree.
What's their function?
Chewing.
Oh, so like teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
Why?
Do we have time to get into that today? We have eyeballs to talk about, man.
Okay. All right. Well,
look.
Okay.
Look,
we derailed last month. We derailed the episode to get into the nitty gritty of bonobo dick size. So
I assumed you would just have that information handy.
I should have.
Yeah.
And you showing us a picture of vaginal teeth and butterflies, and then not giving us any additional information is really. I mean, come on.
So when bugs have sex,
Yeah.
most of them deposit sperm in what's called a spermatophore.
Mhm.
So like the benefit of a spermatophore is that you're getting sperm, and then it's also like a little nugget of like nutrients, and it's like a little like, thanks for letting me have sex with you and for having my babies. Here's some nutrients to help you along in that process, etc. So I don't honestly know if this is true of all butterflies or just this one butterfly. It's probably more butterflies than this one. But their reproductive tract is a lot more like a stomach than even their actual stomach at times.
Interesting. Okay.
And this butterfly, it doesn't dissolve the spermatophore's nutrients using acids. It chews it up with teeth in the vagina.
Nice.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well,
There's a lot of weird stuff going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a really nice thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the cabbage white, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very
so that's a pretty
common,
common butterfly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
see them everywhere.
Mhm.
Yes. The butterfly where we first discovered eyes on the genitals is the Japanese yellow swallowtail butterfly.
Okay.
And so when these butterflies have sex, the way that it happens is basically they get like butt to butt, abdomen to abdomen. The male kind of lines up his abdomen with her abdomen and all of that, you know, like space docket apparatus that they have that needs to, you know, align correctly.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
He will clasp onto her abdomen with separate structures that kind of like pop out and like bloop, hug her abdomen.
Okay.
I have a picture of that. And then he's able, like once it's properly aligned and like clasped into place, then he can dock the penis against the vagina, and then he can deposit the sperm.
And that is called docking.
No, that's just a
Okay.
word I use because it made sense. No, I think that's called sex.
Right. Okay. I didn't know if this was
Intercourse.
like the entomological term for it.
No, definitely not. And so he'll deposit the sperm, which is like in a spermatophore packet, basically, which also provides the function of clogging her up so that she cannot receive more sperm,
Right.
which is
Okay.
also why it's important for her to be able to lay eggs somewhere else from a different
Gotcha.
hole, because the sperm receiving part gets clogged up with sperm.
Gotcha.
Cool. That's what happens. Then they, you know, go their separate ways and, you know, live life. So these photoreceptors were first discovered on accident. And this guy, this researcher, goes into like detail on how he discovered this on accident. He was studying neurons in the abdominal nervous system of this butterfly because he was trying to figure out how they are able to detect their host plants or something. So I don't know, bug nervous systems are weird where they have a brain obviously, but then they also have ganglia down their body, and different parts of the body will like report to these ganglia. So he was studying the abdominal apparatus of this thing. And while studying the mechanoreceptors, which are like the parts that feel touch, he discovered there was a weird spike happening from certain neurons even when he wasn't stimulating the touch receptors. So he was like, that's super weird. I probably did something wrong. And it was getting in the way of what he was actually trying to study. So he like turned off the microscope light to go reconfigure some stuff, and the signal went away, and he was like, oh, weird. Maybe I bumped a wire and I messed something up even worse. So he goes back and turns the light on to troubleshoot things, and the spike returns, and he's like, oh, whoa, hang on. Something is responding to light in the neurons in this abdomen. this quote just kind of threw me off a lot. He says, quote, "Rather excited by the phenomenon, I cut off the butterfly's head."
Yeah.
Okay.
And, bug research gets a little dark sometimes. So he
Yeah.
basically was like, wow, that's amazing. And he cut off the butterfly's head and like chopped it up into sections, I guess leaving the neurons intact, and
Sure.
studied, what was going on here, and basically was able to pinpoint the neurons responsible for this and verified that, yes, indeed, they are susceptible to light and they are receiving information about light, and therefore the eyes were discovered.
Fascinating.
It always amazes, like, how they're so small. How do people do this kind of stuff? Like,
Right?
it's wild.
I thought that frequently this entire time. Like, he was like, oh, I found, so there's 6 pairs of nerves here, and
Yeah.
2 pairs of them were responding to light separately. And it's like, I don't know how you managed to do that,
Yeah.
but they did. So that's pretty crazy.
Quality microscopes.
Yeah.
So basically, there's 2 different pairs of eyes, like stage 2 eyes,
Okay.
on the abdominal end of these butterflies in the genital region. And he went on to investigate other butterflies and moths and ended up finding genital photoreceptors in all of the butterfly species tested.
Mm.
That was 16 different species from 7 families of butterflies,
Oh, wow.
including the ones that are considered to be closest to moths, the skippers.
Mm.
So even they had genital photoreceptors. But they did not exist in any of the moth species that were studied, including daytime or diurnal moths.
Okay.
So neither nocturnal or diurnal moth species studied had any genital eyes.
Okay, so exclusively butterflies.
Yes, exclusively butterflies, and all butterflies that have been studied have them. So it appears to be like a butterfly trait that they have these things. Fascinating.
How
Wild.
much different is the reproductive organs than of moths?
I don't think it's that different. But I don't know, moths also are more nocturnal, and they're also very hairy. And usually, I didn't mention this, but usually the mechanoreceptors, like the touch receptors, are at the base of the hairs. So maybe just the way that they're feeling around and bumping uglies is more like tactile and less
Yeah.
like sighted.
Okay,
I don't
yeah,
know. Yeah. That's my theory anyway. I didn't find like good research on it or didn't read
Yeah,
any.
that makes sense.
Did you find anything about like other orders outside of Lepidoptera that have this?
No, I did
Okay.
not. Mm-mm.
Okay.
So, but has it just not been discovered because
Yeah.
nobody accidentally saw that there were light receiving neurons on their butts? I don't know. Yeah, there's probably a
Yeah.
whole world of like uncommon or like hidden eyes that you couldn't see, because like looking at the abdomen, you cannot tell that there's an eye there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Basically what they discovered was that, so the abdomens, at least of this butterfly that they really did a lot of, documentation on, the cells are pigmented brown, so they're very dark. And then there's like a single spot right where the photoreceptors are, which is clear. So the cuticle of the insect's exoskeleton is clear in that area, and it's free of hairs. And that's the only clue that there's something going on there. But it's like a few cells, right? So it's not
Sure.
easy to see with your naked eye or even under a microscope, honestly. So that's like the only clue that there's something going on there. So who knows? He also discovered that it's not a feature that exists in the larva at all. So there's no photoreceptor cells in larva. It's definitely an adult-only function, so it suits this podcast. And it doesn't develop until the very late pupal stages of metamorphosis.
Okay.
Right. Comes along with sexual maturity.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So what are they for? Now that we've established what genitals are and what eyes are. So of the 2 pairs, we've really only studied one of the pairs, and we know exactly what they're for in both males and females. We know, number 1, that they are sensitive to wavelengths in the ultraviolet to blue range. So it's really good for detecting contrast in bright sunshine, which, incidentally, is when butterflies have sex. Also, I guess it's when butterflies do all butterfly things, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yes. They're sort of solar powered.
Right. Indeed. In females, the first pair of eyes is on the lateral side of the ovipositor. And on males, it's at the scaphium level, which is like the little claspers. There's also one like at the base of the penis, which we haven't studied as much what that one is for. So who knows? And the function is pretty simple. So the males use genital photoreceptors to, quote, achieve correct coupling, which is an etymological term for docking. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas the females use them to confirm whether the ovipositor is correctly pushed out when they're laying eggs.
Okay.
So the females don't use them for sex. The females use them for egg laying.
Gotcha.
The males use it for coupling to make sure that they're correctly aligned.
Interesting. To make sure the ovipositor is correctly it's
Pushed out. Yeah.
how can they not confirm that any other way than visually?
No, which is wild. So we've got
Yeah.
more data on this, which I can talk about in a second. I'll show you a picture of what coupling looks like. The arrow here is pointing to the male structure that's grasping onto the female.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it looks just like a lobe, basically.
Yeah.
That's kind of like wrapping around her abdomen to kind of hold her in place there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And the genitals of butterflies are very loby. Like the penis kind of has some lobes. The vagina is just lobes. The vagina / ovipositor, just lobes all
Lobes.
around.
Yeah.
Very hairy too.
Gotcha.
Yep. Yeah. So here's what we know about the males. Or do you want me to talk about the females first? Because you asked about that.
Follow your heart.
Great. We're going to talk about dudes. We're going to talk about penises. Okay. So here's what we know about male use of eyes during copulation. Number 1, when these photoreceptors are stimulated by light experimentally under experimental conditions, males open their little female receiving lobes, which by the way are called valva.
All right.
Vulva.
Not to be confused with vulva.
Right.
They are valva, which is male. I guess it's like a male vulva that just kind of like hugs the female abdomen.
Okay.
So when the lights are turned off, the valva close. So it kind of seems like the males are getting turned on a little bit by the presence of light there.
Gotcha.
Yes. Also, red light does not do that for them. So it has to be in like the blue spectrum. So when experimenting with this pair of eyes and its hind sights, they did an experiment where they allowed butterflies to mate, but they treated them with various conditions. So, of course, they ran the experiment with nothing at all happening just to establish a baseline. Again, insects are kind of... They would basically immobilize the females and just let males do whatever they wanted to them. And they were all like virgin females, so they were able to be mated with. And under normal conditions, 66% of the time, the males would copulate with the females successfully to completion. Cool. So in this experiment, they went on to do 3 different trials. One where the eyes were painted with black mascara.
Mm-hmm.
One where the eyes were painted with clear mascara, just to, omit the mascara doing something versus the actual, eyes.
Right.
Right. And then they also heat ablated them. So they basically
Jesus.
treated them with, with like a fine heat probe to basically make the eyes non-functional.
Dang.
Yeah. Great. So heat ablated males only successfully copulated 28% of the time. So that was a significant decrease in their ability to actually successfully copulate when they couldn't see.
Dang.
black painted males, 23% of the time were able to copulate. So very
Even
similar.
less?
Mhm.
Well, but less
But
than...
even less, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Not sure what's going on there. When they were painted with clear mascara, they did it 67% of the time, which is basically normal. So 66 was normal, 67 was when they had clear mascara. So basically absolutely no effect just from paint.
Mhm.
So the eyesight is helping them to successfully copulate, and the
Yeah.
majority of butterflies did not successfully copulate when they couldn't see.
Okay.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, okay. And that's just because, well, they were still trying,
They were still trying,
but
and
it's
that's
just
actually
because they couldn't get everything lined up properly.
yeah, that's exactly it, actually. So we saw that in this research, the ablated males, whether it's mascara or heat, spent a lot of time in the searching phase of butterfly sex. So he was fully opening his vulva and like searching around, looking for the correct position, touching it. And then like the next step would be like clasping for insertion, right?
Mhm.
So he spent a lot of time searching and then would abandon it in the times when it wasn't successful.
Gotcha.
And the fraction of males that didn't try to copulate at all stayed consistent the entire time. So it was not that it affected like their horniness or their desire to mate.
Mhm.
It only affected their ability to actually successfully do it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Which
They
is,
just couldn't.
you would think that being stabbed in the junk with a heat probe
Mm-hmm.
would maybe have some impact on your desire for sex,
Yeah. But
but
nope,
not in this case.
definitely did not.
Okay.
And when they did the same thing to females, it did not affect copulation at all. So the same pair of eyes that's analogous to the female butterfly, this like P1 set of eyes,
Mhm.
did not affect copulation. So they were fine no matter what.
Okay.
They didn't need to be able to see to have sex, which makes sense. It seems like it's mostly the males having to do the work
Yeah.
of coupling there. Yeah. So why is this the case? Why are they not able to see? Like, what actual function is the eyes performing? And Alan like nailed it on the head when he said it was the alignment aspect. It is literally how they see whether they are aligned successfully. So basically, they've discovered through experimenting that when they are in the correct position for penis insertion, the eyes are totally covered up and they can't see light. So basically, if they're not aligned correctly, a little bit of light creeps in and they're like, oop, better reposition. And that way they know that their penis is going to go in the correct place.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Okay.
So in order for, successful coupling, they've got to have it like sealed up properly where no
Sure.
light comes in or little light comes in.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it's always covered up, they're confused. And it looks like it's actually the signal of light being present to then going away. Like that signal of the light going away is what tells them that they're in the correct position. So that's why they keep searching, even though it's already covered up. Like it would make it think, you would think that that would trick them into thinking they're already in the correct position, but they can tell they're not. And it's because they're not receiving the signal that it's like chunk, like locking into place.
Right.
Basically.
A vaginal eclipse.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
So are they still the ones like it's okay because they don't even get this right 100% of the time when they are fully functional. So are they just like depositing sperm regardless and just like, well,
it seems like they were abandoning the effort altogether.
Okay, just they were giving up as opposed to just being like, well, I'm just gonna take my shot here.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And of the percentage that didn't couple in the original study, like a percentage of them just didn't try, like they weren't interested in sex.
Okay.
And again, that percentage was consistent no matter what happened to their eyes. So
Gotcha.
the ones that just weren't interested, that wasn't affected, obviously. Yeah. What's also interesting is that they do also have hairs that feel like that have neurons that feel whether things are in position in that region too. And they were, wondering what role those hairs play, because like some of them are able to successfully copulate even without eyes, right? Even if it's a much smaller percentage. And so they went on to ablate those receptors in the area next and observe the mating behavior. And the success rate of just the mechanoreceptors being turned off, it decreased it to 44% from the 66% original. So it affected their ability to copulate, but not nearly to the same degree that the eyes did. So the eyes are much more important for butterfly sex than the feeling and the touch hairs are.
Gotcha.
But they are still playing a role.
Wild.
Yeah. So they hypothesized that like the ones that were able to still mate, it was probably because they could feel enough with the mechanoreceptors to be able to like figure it out.
Interesting.
Right?
Did they happen to take both senses away?
Nope.
Oh, that's surprising.
I know, right?
Because that would be cruel.
Maybe they were running out of
my bad.
butterflies. Oh gosh, they also didn't study the other pair of eyes, so we don't know. Like, it could be that the success, like, was the other pair of eyes also contributing to it, and is that why they could still copulate? And maybe the hairs, were important, but like it's all of the eyes and the hairs working together. Like, I don't know. We just don't know.
So okay. What's the hypothesis then? Like, if they have a level of genital and like reproductive complexity that requires eyesight to like it, to engage sexually.
Yeah.
Like, so what came, like,
Why?
just why? Yeah, like, why? Okay, why did they start out like reproductively complex and then like, as you have photoreceptive cells, mutating back there, that increases reproductive success? Like, is that what happens? Or is it like what I guess what comes first? Is it like the eyeball or like the crazy, like the dick, like what's going on back there? What do they think?
And I honestly don't know, but I think what we can say is that butterfly sex isn't significantly more complex than other insect sex is. Like, that's not that different from the way that butterflies or like dragonflies have sex, honestly. Claspers are involved, lining things up is involved, putting a sperm plug in and aligning things up is involved in all of those situations.
Okay.
And, why butterflies have those eyes versus others, I mean, who can say? Maybe it's like a weird fluke somewhere along the evolutionary chain that ended up being beneficial, and so it was selected for, like but I don't know, like, why don't butterflies or why don't moths have it? Like, dragonflies have pretty good eyes. Maybe that's why they don't have eyes on their abdomen. Maybe they do. Like, I don't know that it's been studied or observed.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, and like they have a much more flexible abdomen too.
True. Yeah.
So they could probably almost probably put it into their field of vision.
Probably. Yeah.
I don't know. This is fascinating.
Right?
Like, just it's just, I don't know.
It might not be like, they may not have needed it, in order to copulate, but now that they have it, like, they can't do without it.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes sense. I don't know. You got eyes on your genitals, you get used to using them. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That's just how they are, man.
I mean, yeah.
Fair.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what about females then? If they're not using those eyes for sex, what are they using them for? And again, I say those eyes as in the analogous pair of eyes. Like, we haven't studied the second pair of eyes in these guys, as far as I can tell.
Right.
And I did try to find the research. I was just finding the same guy talking about the same studies over and over again. So if they're not for sex, what are they for? Obviously, it's for egg laying. We know that. So they are positioned on the ovipositor, and the ovipositor is normally covered up except when it's engaged in egg laying. So to answer your question from earlier, basically the ovipositor is kind of like up in the abdomen a little bit, kind of like, tucked up in a holding place.
Mhm.
And then when they are actively laying eggs, it kind of like pushes out a little bit. And so the eyes aren't even receiving or able to receive light until the ovipositor is pushed out a little bit to lay eggs.
Okay.
So when artificially stimulated, those eyes, the butterflies will sometimes push their ovipositor out, which in a similar movement as when they're laying eggs. So it's kind of like, the males were like, "Ooh, better open up my valva when I get stimulated with light." The butterflies, females, were doing the same thing of when they were when the eyes were stimulated, they would be like, "Whoop, better stick my ovipositor out." So directly related. And the egg-laying process for butterflies has several different senses involved. The first thing is that, as you may be familiar, a lot of butterflies have very specific host plants they're looking for. So the first thing on their agenda is tasting the leaf with their feet using chemoreceptors. So in this butterfly, the swallowtail, they use citrus leaves. So she'll land on a leaf, taste it with her forelimbs, and if she decides that it's the correct plant, at that point she will curl her abdomen down, push out her ovipositor, and touch the leaf surface with it, then depositing an egg.
Okay, because that was what I was wondering. It's like, okay, are they laying eggs like on the underside of leaves, inside of stems? Like, where does the light aspect come into it? Like, where that differentiation is important.
Yeah, and so it looks like they're touching it onto surfaces of leaves, whether it's usually it's on the underneath side of the leaf. But yeah, they're curling the abdomen down, the ovipositor comes out, they touch the leaf, they stick an egg to it, which doesn't seem like it would need sight. Honestly, like it's not
Pretty
guiding,
simple.
like the eyes aren't getting covered up by the leaf. It's
Sure.
it's kind of weird. But for some reason, when they don't have access to their eyes, they can't lay eggs. And this is where it gets kind of complicated with the mechanoreceptors too, because obviously butterflies can sense touch. They also have tons of hairs on their abdomen. They can feel the leaf there. And we know that the mechanical sense is super important. So when the mechanoreceptors, the hairs on the ovipositor, were heat ablated, the female also could no longer lay eggs. So they would push strongly against a leaf, but then would never stick an egg to it because, theoretically, they couldn't feel the leaf was there. So they would just push without feeling that there was a leaf. They would abandon laying an egg. But for some reason, disrupting the eyes also disrupts the oviposition behavior too. So normally, under normal conditions, when a female curls her abdomen down, she'll lay an egg 80% of the time when nothing's wrong with her. 80% of the time, boom, egg comes out. When the photoreceptors are heat ablated, the success plummets to around 3%.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, so like much stronger impact than even the males being able to copulate. So what on earth is happening there? And it's also worth noting that they're not like abandoning the act partway. Like they are still pushing strongly on the leaf the same way they did with the mechanoreceptors being deactivated. So they'll push, but then not deposit an egg most of the time. So like what is happening? Because in those cases, they can feel the mechanoreceptors work, but they don't lay an egg. So basically the hypothesis that these researchers came up with was that it seems like the mechanoreceptors, which again are needed, seem to only be effective when the photoreceptors are active. So basically it seems like in the butterfly's brain, if the eyes aren't activated, then she thinks in her brain, she's like, my ovipositor is not sticking out. And so it doesn't matter to her if she can feel the leaf is there, because her brain is like, ooh, my ovipositor's not out. I can't lay an egg. And so she's only able to rely on those mechanoreceptors to lay an egg if she can see that it's sticking out correctly. Because she can feel that it's sticking out and it's doing it. But like her brain is hardwired to think that it's not working right if she can't see.
That's really strange.
Right?
Because like why have a compensatory sense if you're going to be entirely relying on the visual stimulus? Like, you know, why be, you know, why does it, that's so strange. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's like in order to like, yeah, I don't know. It's like they need to have visual input.
Yeah.
In order to be convinced that everything is working correctly.
Huh.
Isn't that wild?
That's very weird. It seems like, I mean, yeah, they're, yeah. It just like it made sense from the other side of like, you know, the difficulty in like coupling, but like the ovipositor eyes make a lot less sense to me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of their usefulness, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure it's out all the way.
Well, like, I don't know what would happen if a butterfly did try to lay an egg without the ovipositor stretched out. Like, maybe that would damage the egg in some way. And so there's, like, a reason to want to know your apparatus is working correctly.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like, I just don't know if that's true. I mean, that would be the only thing that would make sense to me is, like, if the ovipositor wasn't stretched out, you're going to mess your egg up. And it's going to get fucked up. Or it's not going to attach correctly. Or something like that must be going on there, right? Because otherwise, why would it matter as long as you can like touch the leaf or whatever?
Yeah.
So, and again, the ovipositor itself is extremely hairy. So the ovipositor has hairs. She can feel the ovipositor has touched the leaf. Doesn't matter if she can't see.
Interesting.
Yep. Fascinating. Also, there's a whole other pair of eyes. We don't even know what it does.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah,
More
pretty cool.
questions await.
Indeed. And yet, that's all the answers I have.
Well, it's time for someone else to pick up the torch and shine it on the back end of some butterflies.
Yeah, please tell us what's happening there. So basically the sensory world of butterflies and also other animals is just totally different from us. And, you know, it seems like even though butterflies can feel, at least for these specific adult functions, the sight is more sensitive for them monitoring these behaviors and more important for monitoring or completing both behaviors than any of the other senses that they have that help them achieve them. And that's pretty cool. And it also makes me wonder how moths cope with this too. It makes me wonder, I don't know, moths are more hairy overall. I have no data to back this up. My hypothesis is that maybe they're just so hairy that they don't need eyes and that the hairs are doing fine on their own.
Yeah.
Or
Sure.
that, you know, even butterflies, maybe if they never evolved eyes, they'd still be fine. But
Sure.
who knows?
Maybe moths just have like less reproductive success. Like
That's true. Yeah. I also I don't know how that compares. That's a really interesting question.
That's all. Yeah.
Maybe moths suck at having sex.
it's hard when it's dark, okay?
Look.
They don't do it with the lights on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some do.
Well, that's true. There are diurnal moths. Yeah.
What if the diurnal ones are still only having sex at night though? That's why they don't have eyeballs.
Oh. I mean,
Wow.
it's possible. Nicole, very possible.
Questions. Yeah. This is good.
So many questions. Yeah. I wonder what the moth baseline is, because like in this experiment, the butterflies successfully mated 66% of the time when given the chance.
Yeah.
Like what if in moths it's worse?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting, like, is it an actual advantage in reproductive success to be able to see what you're doing back there? Good questions.
Could be. Fascinating. But that's all the research that I currently have on it. So that's all that I'm able to tell you about.
Well, I want to know more.
Yeah.
Perhaps someday we will.
Yeah.
Soon.
Perhaps.
Entomology students, this is a rich area.
I mean, they're already obsessed with penises. Like,
Yeah. Might as well find out if they've got eyes.
Yes.
More eyes.
More eyes.
yes.
When you gaze into the butterfly's penis, it gazes back at you.
Yes.
I don't like it.
Ah.
With 4 of them, by the way. It's not just like
That's true.
a 1-eye
Mhm.
situation. It's like a 4-eye situation.
Can I tell you,
Please.
I was going to tell you a potential episode title for this.
Okay,
Oh.
great.
Eyeballs Deep.
Oh my god.
All right.
So good.
Okay. Let's go. Let's get to it.
I will say I am comforted by the fact that they don't have like full functional like lenses and high resolution images
fair.
sitting back there, you know?
Yeah, I just need a little
that's
bit of
fair.
shading maybe. And
Yeah,
you're
like,
good to
you
go.
know, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rachel,
You're welcome.
for this is something I truly knew nothing about before this morning. So I appreciate you for bringing this to my attention. And thank you, listener, for joining us on this episode of Filthy Animals. This podcast is produced by Grassland Groupies, dedicated to spreading scientific literacy in the interest of preserving our favorite natural resources on this filthy planet. Send us your fan mail, your hate mail to 4925 South Broadway, number 69, Wichita, Kansas, 67216. Other social media and contact info is in the notes. Rachel, could you give us a little bit of brain bleach for that filth with a wholesome butterfly fact?
When butterflies are born, they don't have to worry about anything but eating.
And predators.
But I don't think they're worried about that as much. Look, Nicole ruined my wholesome fact. All they do is eat. They're just mouths. They don't have stomachs in their vaginas because they don't have vaginas. They're just little baby dolls down there. And they have a lot of legs.
It is.
They
very
only
simple.
have 6 legs, like the adults. Technically.
They have pseudopods. Look, okay, my fun, wholesome butterfly fact is that baby bugs just eat food.
Okay.
That's very wholesome. We'll be back next month with another topic, and bye.